is that's why we can't get off this ride, and I mean, that's why there is no brake to pull, because the value of intelligence is so enormous. I mean, it is just, it's not everything. I mean, it's not that, there are other things we care about and are right to care about beyond intelligence. I mean, love is not the same thing as intelligence, right? But intelligence is the thing that can safeguard everything you love. Right? Like, I mean, even if you think the whole point in life is to just get on a beach with your friends and your family and just hang out and enjoy the sunset, okay, you don't have to augment. You don't need superhuman intelligence to do any of that, right? You're fit to do it exactly as you are. You could have done that in the '70s, and it would just be just as good a beach, and it'd be just as good friends. But every gain we make in intelligence is the thing that safeguards that opportunity for you and everyone else.
How would you? I feel like we've not defined the term artificial general intelligence. From my understanding of it, it's when the intelligence can think and make decisions almost like a human.
Yeah, I mean, loosely, I mean, this is a kind of just a semantic problem, but I mean, intelligence can mean many things, but loosely speaking, it's the ability to solve problems, and meet goals, make decisions, in response to a changing environment, in response to data. And the general aspect of that is an ability to do that in many different situations, all the sort of situations we encounter as people, and to have one's capacity in one area not, as I get better at deciding whether or not this is a cup, I don't magically get worse at deciding whether, you just said a word, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can do, I can do multiple things in multiple channels. That's not something we had in our artificial systems for the longest time, because everything was bespoke to the task. We'd build a chess engine, and it couldn't even play tic-tac-toe. All it could do was play chess, and we just would get better and better in these piecemeal, narrow ways. And then things began to change a few years ago, where you'd get, with like DeepMind would have its algorithms that were, the same algorithm with slightly different tuning could play Go, right? Or it could solve a protein folding problem as opposed to just playing chess, right? And it became the best in the world at chess, and it became the best in the world at Go, and amazingly, I mean, to take what AlphaZero did, it before AlphaZero, all the chess algorithms they just had all of our chess knowledge plowed into them. They had studied every human game of chess, and it was a bespoke chess engine. AlphaZero just played itself, I think, for like 4 hours, right? It just had the rules of chess, and then it played itself, and it became better, not merely than every person who's ever played the game. It became better than all the chess engines that had all of all of our chess knowledge plowed into them. So it's a fundamentally new moment in how you build an intelligent system, and it promises this possibility again, this inevitability. The moment you admit that we will eventually get there, the moment you admit that it can be done in silico, and the moment that you admit that we will just keep going unless a catastrophe happens. And those two things are so easy to admit that I just don't, at this point, I don't see any place to stand where you're not forced to admit them, right? I don't see any neuroscientific or cognitive scientific argument for substrate dependence for intelligence, given what we've already built. And again, we're going to keep going until something stops us. Right? We'll hit some immovable object that prevents us from releasing the next iPhone, but otherwise we're going to keep going. And then, whatever general will mean in that first case, there'll be a case where we've built a system that is so good at everything we care about that is functionally general. Now, maybe it's missing something. Maybe it's not, maybe it's missing something that we don't even have a name for. We're missing all kinds of, there are possible intelligences that we haven't even thought about because we just haven't thought about them. There's things that there are ways to section the universe, undoubtedly, that we can't even conceive of because we have the minds we have.
Elon was asked a question on this by a journalist. The journalist said to him, in a world where you believe that to be true, that artificial general intelligence is around the corner, when your kids come to you and say, Daddy, what should I do with my life to find purpose and meaning? What advice do you now give them if you hold that intuition to be true, that it's around the corner? What do you say to your children when they say, what should I do with my life to create purpose and meaning?
Did you say that Elon answered this question? Yeah, what did he say?
It's one of the most chilling moments in an interview I think I've seen in recent times because he stutters. He goes silent for about 15 seconds, which is very un-Elon. He stutters. He stutters. He stutters a bit more. Like he can't. And then he says he thinks he's living in suspended disbelief because if he really thought about it too much, what's the point? He says, what's the point of me building all these cars? He was in his Tesla factory. What's the point of me building all these cars? And what's the point? I do think that sometimes. So I think I have to live in, as his words were, suspended disbelief.
Right. Well, I would encourage him to ask what's the point of spending so much time on Twitter, because that he could clearly benefit from rethinking that. But that aside, I mean, my answer to that is, and I think other people have echoed this of late, I mean, it's sort of surprising to me. My answer is that this begins to privilege a return to the humanities as a kind of a core, like the center of mass intellectually for us. Because when you look at what we're really good at, and it's among the last things that can be plausibly automated. And if we automate it, we may cease to care about it. So it's like learning to write good code is something that is going to be, it's being automated now. You know, I'm not a programmer, but you know, I have it on good authority that already these large language models are improving code, and something like half the time they're writing better code than people. That's all going to become like chess, right? It's going to be better than people ultimately. So being a software engineer is something that, you know, and being a radiologist and being like those things, it's easy to see how AI just cancels those professions, or at least makes one person, you know, so effective at using AI tools that, you know, one person can do the work of 100 people, so that you got 99 people who don't have to be doing that job. But creating art and, you know, writing novels and being a philosopher and talking about what it means and to live a good life and how to do it, like that's something that if we have to look at those, we have to look at where we're going to care that we're actually in relationship to and in dialogue with another person who we know to be conscious. Right? Like where we don't care about that, we're not going to care. We're going to want just the best version of it. Like, I don't care if the cure for cancer comes from an AI, an insentient AI. I do not give a shit. I just want the cure for cancer. Right? Like, there's no added value that where I find out, okay, the person who gave me this cure really felt good about it, and he's, you know, he had tears in his eyes when he figured out the cure. Every engineering problem is like that. We want safer planes. We want, you know, we just want things to work. We're not sentimental about the artistry that went into all of that. And when the gulf between the best and the mediocre gets big and consequential, we're just going to want the best. We're just going to want the best all the way down the line. But what is the best novel? Right? What is the best podcast conversation? What is it? And can you subtract out the conscious person from that and still think it's the best? And so, like, someone once sent me a what purported to be I didn't even listen to it, so I'm not even sure what it was, but it looked like it was an AI generated conversation between Alan Watts and Terence McKenna. right? And both guys who I love. I mean, I didn't know either of them, but fans of both. I've listened to hundreds of hours of both talk. As far as I know, they never met each other. It would have been a fascinating conversation. I realized when I looked at this YouTube video, I realized I simply don't care how good this is, because I only care if it was actually Alan Watts and Terence McKenna talking. Like a simulacrum of Alan Watts and Terence McKenna in this context, I don't care about. Right. So another use case I stumbled upon. I was playing with ChatGPT, and I asked it, the causes of World War II. Give me 500 words on the cause of World War II. It gives you this perfect little, bullet-pointed essay on the cause of World War II. That's exactly what I want from it. That's fine. That's like I don't care that there was no person behind that typing. But when I think, well, do I want to read Churchill's history of World War II? It's on my shelf to read. It's kind of one of these aspirational sets of books. Haven't read it yet. I actually want to read it because Churchill wrote it, right? Like that's why. And if you could give me an AI version of Churchill, saying this is in the style of Churchill, it's even Churchill scholars say this sounds like Churchill. I actually don't care about it. Like that's not the use. I'll take the generic use of give me the cause of World War II. The fake Churchill is profoundly uninteresting to me. The real Churchill, even though he's dead, is interesting to me.
So the rebuttal I give here, and this is what my mind is doing, is it's saying this. The distinction you're presenting, the difference I see is that in the case of the conversation between two people you respect that has been generated by AI, someone has signaled to you that it is fake. If you remove that, because say Churchill thought, bloody hell, why would I write a book when I could just click a button and this thing will write it in my voice, in my tone of voice, with my with the entire back catalogue of things I've written before, and it will produce my account and it will save me time. So I'll just click a button, my publisher maybe will do it for me, and then I'll sell that to Sam on the basis that it is my thoughts, which I imagine I can imagine a very near future, if we just do it by percentage, how many books are going to be increasingly written by artificial intelligence, to the point that when you look at a shelf, I imagine at some point in the future, if the intelligence does increase by any measure, that most of it would be words strung together by artificial intelligence, and it will be selling potentially better than the words written by humans. So again, when we go back to the conversation with your children, there might not be a career there either, because artificial intelligence is faster, can produce more, can test and iterate on whether it sells better, gets more clicks, it can write the headline, create the picture, write the content, and then I can just take the check because I put my name to it. So I go, even in that regard, what remains?
Well, so in the limit, what I think we're imagining is a world where, and so none of the terrifyingly bad things have happened. So it's just all working. We're just producing a ton of great stuff that is better than the human stuff, and people are losing their jobs. So we got a labor disruption, but we're not talking about any other kind of political catastrophe or cyber apocalypse, much less AGI destroying everything. Then I think we just need a different economic assumption and ethical intuition around the value of work. I mean, our default norm now in a capitalist society is you have to figure out something to do with most of your time that other people are willing to pay you for. Right? You have to figure out how to add value to other people's lives such that you reliably get paid. Otherwise, you might die. Right? Like, we've got a social safety net, but it's pretty meager. There are cracks you can fall through. You could wind up homeless, and we're not going to figure out what to do about that all too well. And your claim upon your existence among us is you finding something to do with your time that other people will pay you for, right? And now we've got artificial intelligence removing some of those opportunities, creating others, but in the limit, And I do think it is different. I think analogies to other moments in technological history are fundamentally flawed. I think this is a technology which, in the limit, will replace jobs and not create better new jobs in their way. Right? This just cancels the need for human labor ultimately. And it replaces some of the highest status, most cognitively intensive jobs first, right? It replaces Elon Musk before it replaces your electrician or your plumber or your masseuse, way before, right? So we have to internalize the reality of that. Again, this is in success. This is all good things happening, right? And we have to have a new ethic. We have to have a new economics based on that ethic, which is, UBI is one solution to this. Like, you shouldn't have to work to survive, right?
Universal basic income.
Yeah, there's just so much abundance now being created. We have to figure out how to spread this wealth around, right? We've got a cure for cancer over here. We've got perfect, photovoltaic driven economies over here, where it's like we've solved the climate change issue. We're just pulling wealth out of the ether, essentially. We've got, nanotechnology that is just birthing whole new industries. Yeah, but it's all being driven by AI. We don't, there's no room in this. Whenever you put a person in the decision chain, you're just adding noise. This is the best thing. This should be the best thing that's ever happened to us. This is just like God handing us the perfect labor-saving device, right? The machine that can build every other machine, that can do anything you could possibly want. We should figure out how to spread the wealth around in that case, right? This is just powered by sunlight. No more wars over resource extraction. It can build anything. We can all be on the beach, just hanging out with our friends and family, right? Like.
Do you believe we should do universal basic income, where everybody's given like a monthly check?
Something we have to break this connection. Again, this is what will have to happen in the presence of this kind of labor force dislocation, enabled by all of this going perfectly well, right? Like this again, just this pure success. Just AI is just producing good things, and the only bad thing is putting all these people out of work. It's coming for your job eventually.
I've heard this, and I've my issue with it, and my rebuttal when I talk to my friends about this idea of universal basic income, when we hand out enough cash or resources to people so that they're stable, which I'm not necessarily against, but just want to play with it a little bit, is humans seem to have an innate desire for purpose and meaning, and we seem to be designed and built psychologically for labor and for discomfort.
But it doesn't have to be labor that's tied to money. Right?
Yeah.
Like it can be like we will get our status in other ways, and we'll get our meaning in other ways. And again, these are all just stories we tell ourselves. I mean, like, you're talking to a person who knows it's possible to be happy actually doing nothing, right? Like just sitting in a room for a month, right, and just staring at the wall, right? Like that,
you've done it.
Like that's possible, right? So, and yet that's most people's worst nightmare. This solitary confinement in a prison is considered a torture, right? And I know people who spent 20 years in a cave, right? So it's like there are capacities here that are worth talking about, but just more commonly, I think we want to be entertained, we want to have fun, we want to be with the people we love, we want to be useful in relationship, and insofar as that gets uncoupled from the necessity of working to survive, right? It doesn't all just go away. We just need new norms and new ethics and new conversations around what we do on vacation, right? It's like what you're imagining is that if you put everyone on vacation, on the best vacation, you can make the vacation as good as possible, a majority of people will eventually be miserable because they're not back at work, right? And yet most of these people are working so that they have enough money so that they could finally take that vacation, right? We will figure out a new way to be happy on the beach, right? I mean, like if you get bored with Frisbee, we will figure something else out that is fun You know, you can read. I'll be able to read the Churchill history of World War II on the beach, and not be rushed by any other imperative because I'm happily retired, right? Because my AI is creating the thing that is solving all my economic problems, right? We should be so lucky as to have that be our problem. Like how to be happy in conditions of no economic imperative, no basis for political strife on the basis of scarce resources, and no question about it. The question of survival is off the table with respect to what one does with one's time and attention. Right? You can be as lazy as you want and you'll still survive. You can be as unlucky as you want and you'll still survive. I mean, the awful situation we're in now is that differences in luck mean everything, right? Someone is born in without any of the advantages that we have. We don't have a system. We don't have an economic system that reliably gives them every advantage and opportunity they could have. Right? We don't have we've convinced ourselves we either don't have the resources or we've convinced ourselves we don't have the resources. We don't have the incentive such that we access the resources so as to actually come to the help of people we could help. Right? I mean, the idea that people starve to death it's unimaginable, and yet it still happens. That's not a scarcity problem, it's a political problem wherever it happens. And yet all of this is tied to a system where everyone has convinced themselves that it's normal to really have one's survival be in question if one doesn't work, right? And by choice or by accident. Like if you haven't, I think it's still true that at least in the U.S., this is almost certainly not true in the U.K., but in the U.S., the most common reason for a personal bankruptcy is, overwhelming medical expense that just comes upon you for whatever reason. Your wife gets cancer, you guys go bankrupt solving the cancer problem or failing to solve the cancer problem, and now everything else unravels, right? And we have a society which thinks, yeah, well, unlucky you, that's, if you wind up homeless, just don't sleep in front of my store because I need you're going to hurt my business. Successful AI that cancels lots of jobs would only be canceling those jobs by virtue of producing so many good things, so much value for everybody that we would have to figure out how to spread that wealth around. Otherwise we would have an amazingly dystopian bottleneck for a few short years, and then we would just have a revolution. Right? Then the guys in their gated communities making trillions of dollars based on them having gotten close enough to the GPUs that some of it rubbed off on them. They'd be dragged out of their houses and off their Gulf Streams, and we would have a fundamental reset. We'd have a hard reset of the political system.
If I had to put you in a yes or no situation and ask your intuition the question now, that if your objective was to, which I'm sure it is to encourage the betterment of humanity and to increase our odds of happiness and well-being 100 years from now, and there was a button placed in front of you, and it would either end the development of artificial intelligence as we've seen it over the last decade, so we'd never proceed with developing intelligent machines, or not. So you could press a button and stop it right now. What would you do?
And stop it permanently, such that we never then do that thing? We just never figure out how to build intelligent machines?
Pause it indefinitely.
Well, I would definitely pause it to a point where we would get our heads around the alignment problem. Yes.
Permanently. If the button was a permanent pause that you couldn't undo.
Well, the question is, how deep does that go? So, like, we have everything we have now, but it just never gets better.
Yeah, we never make progress from here.
Right.
And your objective is to make humanity happy and prosperous.
mean, it's hard because when you begin imagining all of the good stuff that we could get with aligned superhuman AI, well then, it's just, cornucopia upon cornucopia. It's just everything is potentially within reach. Yeah, I mean, I take the existential risk scenario seriously enough that I would pause it. I would say. I mean, I think we will eventually get to it. If curing cancer is a biomedical engineering problem that admits of a solution, and I think there's every reason to believe it ultimately would be, we will eventually get there based on our own, muddling along with our, current level of tech, currently information tech. I'm, reasonably confident of that. Because I mean, our intelligence shows every sign of being general. It's just it's not as fast as we would want it to be. It's not what the thing that AI is going to give us is going to give us speed that is. I mean, there's speed and then there's the access. There's memory, right? It's like we can't integrate. We don't have the ability. No person or team of people can integrate all of the data we already have, right? So that the real promise here is that these systems will be able to find patterns that we wouldn't even know how to look for, and then do something on the basis of those patterns. I think an intelligent search within the data space, by apes like ourselves, will eventually do most of the great things we want done, and there isn't. I mean, the problems we need to solve so as to safeguard the career of our species and to make civilization durable and sane and to remove this sword of Damocles that is over our heads at every moment. That at any moment we could just decide to have a nuclear war that ruins everything, or create an engineered pandemic that ruins everything. We don't need superhuman intelligence to solve all those problems. And we need an appropriate emotional response to the untenability of the status quo, and we need a political dialogue that eventually transcends our tribalism.
Changed my mind about one of the most profound things I think anyone could believe, which was when I was 18, I believed in Christianity. Mm-hmm. And then there was a couple of moments that shook my belief. Nothing on a personal level, just a couple of ideas that managed to sort of infect my operating system that led my curiosity towards your work. And I changed my mind profoundly. Yeah. It's such a profound change that I had. How do we change our minds? And I really want to focus that question on the individual's mind. Like, I want to change my mind. I want better beliefs, better ideas in my head that are going to allow me to get out of my own way. Because I'm miserable. I'm not living the life that I would say I know I can live, but some people don't even know they can live a better life. I'm not happy. That's the signal. And I want to rectify this in some way.
Yeah, well, there are a few bright lines for me. I mean, take our ethical lives and our relationships to other people, right? So there's the problem of individual well-being that kind of is still real, even if you're in a moral solitude. If you're on a desert island by yourself, you really don't have ethical questions that are emerging because you're not in relationship to anybody else, but you still have the problem of how to be happy. But so much of our unhappiness is in collaboration with others, right? We're unhappy in our relationships, we're unhappy professionally, and it's worth looking at how we're behaving with other people. For me, the highest leverage change I ever made, and it's very easy to spell out, and it's very clear, and ultimately it's pretty easy, is just to decide that you're not going to lie about anything, really. I mean, there might be some situations in extremis where you'll feel forced to lie, but those, in my view, are analogous to acts of violence that you may be forced to use in self-defense, right? So like lying is sort of the first stage on the continuum of violence for me, right? So like, I'm not going to lie to someone unless I recognize that this is not a rational actor who I can possibly collaborate with. This is someone I have to avoid or defeat or otherwise, contain their propensity to do me harm. So, yes, if the Nazis come to the door and ask if you've got Anne Frank in the attic, yes, you can lie, or you can shoot them, or you can. These are not normal circumstances. But that aside, every other moment in life where people are tempted to lie is one that I think you can categorically rule out as being unethical. And being beyond unethical, it's just not. It's creating a life you don't. When you examine it, you don't want to live, right? I mean, the moment you know that you're not going to lie to people, and they know that about you, it's like all of the social dials get sort of recalibrated on both sides, and then you find yourself in the presence of people who don't ask you for your opinion unless they really want it, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you're honest, I mean, then it's a night and day difference when you're giving people feedback, critical feedback, and they know you're honest, right? They know their bullshit detector is not going off because they just know you're even when it's not convenient, you're being honest, or even when it's not comfortable, you're being honest. One, that's incredibly valuable because basically you're giving them the information that you would want if you were in their shoes, right? Because we have this sort of delusion that takes over us whenever we're tempted to tell a white lie. We imagine, okay, this person doesn't want. It'd be much better for me to just tell them the kind fiction than tell them the uncomfortable truth, right? But we don't do we don't even calculate for the golden rule there most of the time. And if you just took a moment, you'd realize, oh, wait a minute. Does someone who is actually doing a bad job want me to tell them that they're doing a good job and then just send them out into the world to bounce around other people who are going to be recognizing, as I just did, that the thing they're doing isn't so great, right? You're just not doing them a favor. Right?
This is part of the nature of belief change, isn't it? That when we believe that someone is on our side, or we believe from like a political standpoint that they represent the 99% of the views that we represent, we're much more likely to change our beliefs. I spoke to Tali Sharot about this, the neuroscientist, and I wrote about this in a chapter in my upcoming book about how you change people's minds. And they showed in the elections that if like a flat earther says something to a flat earther about the nature of the earth, they'll believe it. But if NASA says something to a flat earther, they will just dismiss it on sight because the source of that information is not one that they believe or trust or believe is well-intentioned.
I mean, this is a bug, not a feature. I mean, it's understandable, but this is something we have to grow beyond because the truth is the truth, right? So you can't, I mean, and it goes in both directions. The person on your team who you love and respect is capable of, in their very next sentence, of speaking a falsehood, right? Yeah. And you need to be able to detect that. And conversely, the person you least respect is capable of saying something that's quite incisive and worth taking on board. And so we have to have this sort of meta cognitive layer where we're noticing how we're getting played by our social alliances and recognize that the truth and rather often important truths are evaluated by different principles. I mean, it's not a matter of the messenger. You shouldn't shoot the messenger and you shouldn't worship him.
You mentioned lying as being removing lying and being more honest as being a significant step change in your own happiness. Is that accurate?
In my happiness.
In your own happiness, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Immensely so, because it's
how practically and specifically how?
so and when you look at how people ruin their reputations and their relationships and their businesses, their careers, the gateway to all of the misbehavior that accomplishes that is lying. You look at somebody like Lance Armstrong, right? Or Tiger Woods, right? These guys are the absolute apogee of sport. Everyone loves them. Everyone's just amazed at what they've accomplished. And yet, the dysfunction in their lives just gets vomited up for all to see at a certain point. And it was